Coming up today, 10 Koreans have been killed and 10 others seriously injured after a bus they were travelling in plunged off a bridge in northeast China. Korea's monthly current account surplus climbs to more than $8.6 billion in May, extending the nation's surplus run to a record 39th consecutive month. First, with Athens striking a slightly softer tone, eurozone leaders say they won't hold bailout talks with Greece until the result of Sunday's referendum is known. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Thursday, the 2nd of July. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this afternoon, at least 10 Koreans and a Chinese bus driver have been killed in a bus crash in northeastern China. Of the Korean victims, 9 were public workers and 1 was a local tour guide. 10 out of the 16 injured are suffering from serious but non-life-threatening injuries. The Foreign Ministry says the bus carrying 26 Koreans and 2 Chinese nationals veered off a bridge in the northeastern Chinese city of Jian and hurtled 15 meters into a river on Wednesday afternoon local time. The officials were traveling on a training program organized by Korea's local government Officials Development Institute. The Korean government has already dispatched an emergency response team to the accident site. The exact reason for the accident has yet to be confirmed. A number of standing committees at the National Assembly are holding budget settlement meetings for the 2014 fiscal year today. With the Parliament schedule back on track since Wednesday, 8 committees out of a total of 16 are reviewing government ministries' reports on closing accounts. Meanwhile, the ruling Saenuri Party's embattled floor leader Yoo Seung-min has once again vowed to work with the opposition camps to draw up a more than $13 billion supplementary budget plan by July 20th. Speaking at the party's Supreme Council meeting on Thursday, Yoo said the party will focus on passing the budget during the July extraordinary session, indicating that he intends to stay on as floor leader despite mounting pressure for him to resign. The floor leader of Korea's main opposition party will meet with the party's chairman today to try and reach some middle ground over his walkout protest. Lee Jong-gol has been refusing to take part in Supreme Council activities due to his grievances over the appointment of Chae Jae-sung as the party's Secretary General. Chairman Moon Jae-in's appointment of Chae last week was met with criticism, with some opposition lawmakers accusing Chae of not representing the politics of unity and harmony. Chae is believed to be part of a faction linked with former President Roh Moo-hyun. He'll be tasked with preparing for next year's general elections and selecting candidate nominations. Now, critics like Lee Jong-gol say the appointment is a signal that Moon Jae-in's faction will continue to dominate the party. Now, it should come as a little surprise by now, but Korea's current account surplus is in the black yet again, extending its surplus streak to a record 39 months. It's not all good news, though, as recent surpluses have been more to do with falling imports rather than rising exports. Our Kim Min-ji has more.
Korea posted another current account surplus in May. The Bank of Korea says preliminary data show the surplus hit $8.65 billion, up more than 6% from the previous month. With that said, Korea has broken its previous record surplus run of 38 months, which started back in June 1986. The central bank forecasts the nation's current account surplus to hit a record $96 billion this year. However, it's not all good news. The surplus comes amid a slump in both exports and imports, which points to a surplus trend that mainly stems from sluggish domestic demand. In May, exports fell almost 11% on year, while imports dipped at an even faster rate of over 15%. Exports, the traditional driving force of the Korean economy, have been on a downward trend, partly due to the strengthening Korean won, which has eroded the country's price competitiveness on the global market.
The surplus comes on the back of the country slumping exports amid a weak economy, and this trend will likely continue for some time. The Korean won has already strengthened against the yen and the euro, and this, coupled with the decline in demand in emerging economies, hasn't been helping Korea's exports.
Although a current account surplus is usually seen as a good factor for a country's economy, there are rising concerns it could burden local exporters by further adding upward pressure on the local currency. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, an additional case of Middle East respiratory syndrome was reported in Korea earlier today, ending a 4-day period with no new infections. This brings the total number of people diagnosed with the MERS virus now to 183. The Health Ministry says the latest confirmed case is a nurse from Seoul Samsung Medical Center, the epicenter of this outbreak, responsible for 88 infections. Another nurse has also tested positive for the disease in a primary test and will go through further examinations. Now, no MERS-related deaths have been reported for 2 straight days now. That means the death toll stays at 33. Meanwhile, 5 more people have been discharged from hospital, taking the number of fully recovered patients to 102. However, the country still has over 2,200 suspected cases. Now, the MERS outbreak did not keep all Koreans at home, especially those deciding to take trips overseas. Data from Korea's 2 leading travel agencies shows more than 250,000 Koreans travelled abroad last month. That's up 18% from the same period last year. The agency added that the number of reservations for foreign trips dropped temporarily at the beginning of June, but increased towards the end of the month. However, the ongoing outbreak convinced nearly 140,000 foreigners to refrain from coming to Korea, resulting in a loss of some $106 million in tourism revenue. The number of visiting foreigners recorded an on-month decline for the first time in May this year, dropping 3.6%. Moving on to the latest developments in Greece's debt crisis, and it looks like the troubled country's fate will be decided after a critical referendum slated for Sunday, as eurozone ministers have ruled out any talks until after that crucial vote. Han Da-an has the details.
Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras made yet another set of proposals to Greece's eurozone partners on Wednesday in his latest attempt to save the country from financial collapse. While accepting most of the terms previously laid out by international creditors, he requested a 2-year bailout amounting to 29.1 billion euros. But the eurozone ministers rebuffed the proposal, saying there will be no further talks until after the referendum. Greeks will vote yes or no on the current bailout terms on Sunday, which experts say will decide the fate of the country's membership in the eurozone. According to a survey published by a local newspaper on Wednesday, 54% of Greeks said they will vote no. Greece's socialist government has been urging Greeks to vote no, but it wants more talks so Athens can stay in the eurozone.
We are prepared to accept even strict measures as long as the framework in which they are contained are sustainable, so Greece can grow and Grexit disappears.
Meanwhile, IMF chief Christine Lagarde says she wants to see Greece take deliberate moves toward reforms before providing it with debt relief. Her remarks came after Athens technically defaulted on its 1.5 billion euro debt to the agency. Han Da-an, Arirang News.
US President Barack Obama has announced the re-establishment of US-Cuba diplomatic ties. Speaking at a press conference in the Rose Garden on Wednesday, Obama said that while there were some serious differences between the countries, the last 5 decades of diplomatic estrangement had not worked. Obama added that Washington will find new ways to work with Cuba moving forward. The US will open its embassy in Havana on July 20th. Officials say US Secretary of State John Kerry plans to travel to the Cuban capital for the historic occasion. There has been no official US embassy in Cuba since Washington severed diplomatic relations in the early 1960s at the height of the Cold War. And the United States has released a new military strategy to reflect the current global security situation. 4 specific nations were mentioned as major threats to US national security. Son Jung-in has more.
Chairman of U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff Martin Dempsey introduced the National Military Strategy for 2015, which singled out 4 states that pose an aggressive threat to its security interests and global peace. The report said Russia has repeatedly demonstrated that it does not respect the sovereignty of its neighbors and added that its military actions are undermining regional security, referring to its troop presence in the Ukraine conflict. The 17-page strategy document also mentioned China as a country they want to partner with for greater international security. But it also noted U.S. concerns about Beijing's land reclamation efforts in the contested South China Sea. In addition to the 2 nations, the paper also included Iran and North Korea, highlighting their nuclear and ballistic missile capabilities. It specifically mentioned a cyber attack from North Korea that caused major damage to Sony Pictures late last year. Dempsey said none of the nations are believed to be seeking direct military confrontation with the U.S. or its allies, but stressed that nonetheless they each pose serious security concerns. Faced with non-state adversaries like the self-proclaimed Islamic State group, Dempsey warned of long and complex fights ahead and said the U.S. military must be ready to fight extremist organizations. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's politics of fear is being felt beyond the regime's borders. According to sources, some mid-level North Korean officials based abroad are choosing to defect to South Korea. Connie Kim has more.
Has the young North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's politics of fear reached such a level that its officials want to escape from the regime? An unnamed source well acquainted with North Korea says that the fear of Kim Jong-un by mid-level North Korean officials abroad has reached a serious point. The source goes on to say a significant number of these officials have even defected to South Korea. And as for the higher-ranking members of the regime, the source said high-level officials are less willing to take responsibility for their work to protect themselves from getting into trouble. Another diplomatic source corroborates the source, saying that a low-level official from the North's Labor Party defected to the South, fearing the young leader's reckless leadership. Last May, South Korea's National Intelligence Service said Kim Jong-un ordered the execution of its defense minister Hyun Young-chul for disrespecting the upper leadership. The spy agency also added that Kim has approved the executions of around 70 senior officials since coming to power in late 2011. Some experts say Kim's such move will only add to the regime's instability. Others say fear politics is part of the young leader's methods for reaffirming loyalty to the regime. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, it has emerged that Japan's Deputy Foreign Minister Shinsuke Sugiyama made an unannounced visit to Korea this week to fine-tune last-minute details regarding Tokyo's push to register former industrial sites on UNESCO's World Heritage List. According to government officials in Seoul, the Japanese diplomat held talks with his Korean counterpart Kim Hong-gyun, followed by a meeting with Vice Foreign Minister Jo Tae-yeol on Wednesday. The diplomats are known to have reached a consensus on some issues during the final stage consultations, although not that much has been revealed. They are also said to have discussed other pending issues to follow up on talks between their respective foreign ministers last month. During those talks, Tokyo agreed to specify the fact that tens of thousands of Koreans were used as slave laborers at the sites during Japan's colonial rule of Korea. A former sex slave to the Japanese military during World War II is currently on a week-long visit to the United States. The aging victim is there to share her agonizing past with the world. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
90-year-old Kim Bok-dong is in the United States this week to raise awareness about what she endured during World War II. She's one of the 200,000 women who were forced to serve Japanese soldiers at military brothels. The biggest event of her trip was a protest in front of the Japanese embassy in Washington. Despite her age, Kim took part in the protests, calling for an official apology and legal compensation from the Japanese government.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe must apologize and give us legal compensation to recover our dignity as much as he damaged it.
The protest, organized by civic group the Korean Council for the Women Drafted for Military Sexual Slavery by Japan, was attended by American activists as well.
These are historic crimes committed against humanity that we always have to continue to remember why they happened, and lift them up so that we can try to prevent them from happening in the future.
The organizers say the protests will continue until the Japanese government apologizes and compensates the victims. But with the recent passing of a few Korean comfort women, the number of surviving former victims has dwindled to 49, a reminder that time is running out for the women to get the justice they deserve. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Have a wonderful day, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. And we do hope to see you at the same time tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.